We had a fabulous question, which I'd really like to start with, which is, where is the tipping point between protecting the business from operational risk and staying competitive and profitable?
Yeah, this is the question, the hammer that hits the nail on the head here, because this is the big question. Like, how do you build resilience and kind of manage the risk, control risk, but also be really competitive and also innovative into the future? And we've actually got a model that I developed a few years ago that I think we can bring up on the screen here, that I did in conjunction with the British Standards Institution on resilience. And it talks about some of the tensions in resilience. Now, on this webinar, I don't want to get into sort of being really academic going through a model, so I've got a couple of props here that I want to use to kind of explain this. So those people listening to this at the moment, when you say, what do you think resilience is, organisational resilience is, I bet there's a bunch of people watching this that will go, it's actually about how do we control risk, how do we put in place some defences to stop things happening to the organisation. It's like building some robustness. Now, a lot of organisations do this, either kind of explicitly or they kind of implicitly have a set of assumptions around what creates resilience. And a lot of this is driven by a mindset that consistency and standardization is the answer to resilience. So my first prop here, if you take different aspects of an organization and you go, okay, so we've got our goals, we've got a standardized set of goals, everyone's working to the same objective. And then we've got a standardized set of processes. So we've got standard operating procedures for everything. And then we want a standard set of behaviors. So we run a load of compliance training to make sure everyone's following the procedure. And then in many organizations now, we're even standardizing our values. So we've all got to have the same set of values. So this is really about driving a standardization agenda. And what these organizations do, this is the bottom left quadrant of this model. This version of resilience says that what we do is we build robustness by building that together, and we create a nice, robust organization that's really standardized, because we know that anything, any deviation from kind of normal, any kind of errors might lead to problems. So we create this kind of defensive organization, defenses in depth, okay? And that's like one version of resilience. And you see that a lot in kind of high hazard industries, yeah? Now, what the problem with this isn't very commercially viable. You can't make much money doing this. And every organization wants to have competitive advantage. So what you want to do is try and get more from less. So we've got our resources here, and what we'll do in the next bit is we'll try and make this spread out so we get a bit more from the resources that we've got, and we stretch the system and we improve the system. We're getting more from less, and we're actually doing more from this. This is more competitive, but the problem is this starts to become a bit brittle.
A little bit wobbly.
So a little bit wobbly there. But that's still like the standardization agenda. So that's the top left of the quadrant. We optimize, we do what we've always done, same process, same technology, same resources, but we're just stretching it, getting more and more from less. That's kind of like the efficiency agenda. And that is an aspect of resilience. If you don't improve, you're not going to be resilient. If you don't make any money, you're not going to be resilient in the long term. So that's one view. The second view is that resilience is actually about flexibility. Another prop. So this is the bouncing back version of resilience, bottom right quadrant on that model. And a lot of people say resilience is about this kind of flexibility. So you stretch the system and you bounce back to where you were. Okay, and that's one. So what we do in organizations is we create a whole set of like business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans. We empower people to be responsive. We have devolved teams, and they're all like told that you can be creative problem solvers and you can kind of stretch and you can bounce back. But the problem is, do we really want to bounce back? That's still quite defensive. So the kind of progressive top right version of that, another one of my props here, is a piece of blue tack.
Oh,
so
beautiful and new and
yeah, so there's
pristine.
a point to this as well, is that I can now create anything I like from this. And as a leader in the organization, you're probably a bit worried about what I'm making with this on camera and where this is going. So I can kind of make anything. And that's like part of this, because that top right box actually makes us a little bit anxious because we're letting go of control. Okay, so we're actually not controlling risk. This could go anywhere. You've got people going in the whole organization being really creative and innovative. Now, this is great. This is a great version of resilience. one of the things is we can never put that flat again and put it back in the pot. So we're not going back to where we are. It's not about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward. And the whole point of this model, which hopefully I've kind of illustrated there, is that all four of those are absolutely crucial for resilience. It cannot be that you are singularly preoccupied with one of those boxes. Every one of those on the model has a failure. So if you put too many controls in place, you can become very stagnant as an organization. If you have a lot of responsiveness, it can become really fragmented. If you have a lot of optimization, you can become very brittle as an organization. And if you do too much innovation, it can become completely chaotic as an organization. And you see like lots of different organizations have problems because they've got a version of resilience that isn't fit for what they're trying to do. So resilience for a nuclear power station is going to be very different, probably more bottom left, than a high-tech startup. But what we see all the time is that organizations and their culture and their approach to resilience isn't fit for the environment that they're in.